Hi, and welcome to this recording of Sheffield Methodist District's Justice Seekers conversation from October 2023. The topic of our conversation this evening was how to talk about asylum. My thanks to Anne Hollows for organising our gathering and to our speakers, Tom Martin, Director of City of Sanctuary Sheffield, and Rev Inderjit Bhogal, founder of the City of Sanctuary and Church of Sanctuary movements. Thanks to both Tom and Inderjit for allowing us to record their conversations as well, so that you're able to listen to these if you weren't able to join our conversation. I think we had a really good evening. I learned a lot. We had a productive conversation around some really challenging subjects. Do get in touch and check out details on our website if you'd like to hear more about our future conversations. Thanks very much.
Nice. I'm going to do a brief rundown of the work that we do at City of Sanctuary Sheffield. I'm then going to do an even briefer rundown of the current change in legislation in the country and the backdrop behind that. I won't be able to go into everything, and there's no point, but I'll give you a flavour. And it won't taste particularly good, but I'll do that. I'll then think about the key issues that we face in Sheffield, and talk briefly about what you guys can do to walk alongside people seeking sanctuary as they navigate their way through the asylum system. So starting briefly with what we do. So as Anne mentioned, City of Sanctuary Sheffield was the first, we were the first City of Sanctuary in the UK. We ourselves are a charitable organisation, and we have a vision of a city that is safe and welcoming for people seeking sanctuary. That's what we're working towards. That's what all our focus is on. It's a long way away in the current climate, but that's where we're headed. And what we do at City of Sanctuary Sheffield is we both walk alongside people, individuals seeking sanctuary, as they navigate the system of asylum, and also fight to change that system, because it's an unfair system, it's a cruel system, and it's a dehumanizing system. So if we're in this work, we have to try and change it. So what do we do? What work do we do in that? We build safe and welcoming spaces in the city. So that is about creating areas where asylum seekers and refugees can feel safe, can feel like they're in a homely place, and can feel confident to be themselves. The sanctuary is one example of that. I don't know if any of you know the sanctuary. If you walk from the Crucible in Tudor Square down Chapel Walk to Fargate, take a look on your right, and there's a beautiful building that is a model of the kind of world we want to build, and is a clear example of those safe and welcoming spaces we're trying to build. But that cannot end. That cannot start and end at the sanctuary. It has to be across the city. And we work with others to try and help them make their spaces safe and welcoming for people seeking sanctuary. We also provide direct support and work collaboratively with others to signpost people to the correct support. So that's about making sure, because of the policy environment, people need support navigating it. They need advice, and they need services, basically, whether that is legal advice, whether that is advice on how to access benefits, whether that is mental health support. So we either provide that, or we support people to get access to it. As we all know, accessing statutory stuff is hard, even if you were born in the country, if you speak English and you have lots of support. So let alone for people who've come to Sheffield for the first time, don't speak English. Accessing this stuff is hard. So we either do the work or we support them to access it. And then the final thing we do is work to affect system change. So that is about, on a regional, citywide level, lobbying, advocating, campaigning to try and get Sheffield to do what it can within the confines of the hostile environment to make the lives of people seeking sanctuary better. Or it's about joining national campaigns and national advocacy work to get some kind of policy change nationally. Now, given the rhetoric that's coming out of the government at the moment, that's a long way away, but we're hopeful that they won't be in power for long, and that a new government will be more susceptible and more willing to evidence-based policy making. So that's a bit about what we do at City of Sanctuary Sheffield. I encourage you to go to our website actually to have a closer look. We've got a beautiful team and a huge team of volunteers, many of whom have lived experience of seeking sanctuary doing that work. Now, the context we're doing that work in is the hostile environment, and that is a word that's used a lot. What that basically means it is both a hostile policy framework. So the laws of this country are set up to make life difficult for people seeking sanctuary. And also combined with that is the rhetoric and the narrative that pits people seeking sanctuary as other to us, as something to be afraid of, which brings everyone down and does not serve our country and is only used to further certain agendas. Now, I'll go a little bit into the policy framework we have at the moment. The most recent, the two most recent bills that came through, which you may or may not have heard of, which were taken forward by the Home Office, were the Nationality and Borders Act, which came through last year, and the Illegal Migration Bill, which came through this year. Now, I'll just talk about the Illegal Migration Bill because that's the latest one. And just to give you a flavour of what it's trying to do, it essentially is looking to bring in changes to the asylum system so it makes anyone who arrives into our country on a non-legal route, on an irregular route, unable to claim asylum. Now, the only regular route that exists is for people from Ukraine, and a very small, now finished scheme for people from Afghanistan. So essentially, it means that anyone coming to the country to claim asylum, their claim will not be allowed. It will be inadmissible. That is just one part of one bill, of one strand of this overall hostile environment. And I think it just gives you a flavour of the kind of thing we're dealing with. Essentially, this new bill and that particular strand all but extinguishes the right to claim asylum in the UK. It breaches our obligations towards stateless people under international law. It violates Article 31 of the Refugee Convention. It takes us away from the country that we want to be and the country that we're trying to build. And in my view, it takes us away from a tradition that faith communities have across the board of treating people, regardless of their background, with humanity and dignity. And I think that's why it speaks so much and why it's so important for the church and other faith communities to engage with this. And they really do. The faith community plays a huge part in standing up to this kind of challenge. So that's what we do. A little bit about the policy framework that we're in. Issues we see in Sheffield. So once people get to the UK within this hostile environment, they face all of the challenges that you would expect. You know, the accommodation that they're forced to live in is terrible. The funding they're given is minimal, so they live in enforced poverty. They're not allowed to work, so people are waiting in the asylum system for years while being stripped of their right to work. And these are people who have very legitimate claims to be here. You know, from a lot of countries, the success rate for asylum claims is over 95%. Places like Sudan, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Eritrea. These are places where people will get status eventually, but they're treated really poorly in the interim. So we see loads of issues arising around those things I've just noted. And the final thing I want to mention is what you can do in this context. So we're lucky in Sheffield. We have a really strong movement of lots of organizations, lots of individuals. You know, to name two on this call, Anne and Inderjit, who've been, I'm sure there are others, but who've been tirelessly working for years to further the rights of people seeking sanctuary. And there are a huge number of people seeking sanctuary themselves who are part of the community and who are engaging in this work. Can I share my screen quickly? Is that okay? Yes, I can. Here we go. So if I share my screen here, I'm going to show you two things to get involved. Now, in a non-biased way, we're going to start with City of Sanctuary Sheffield. If you go to our website and go to get involved, there are a number of things you can do. Volunteering is key. You can see our volunteer team here. That's part of it. And that allows you to proactively engage with what's going on a day-to-day basis. It's changing so rapidly. But you can, in Sheffield, work alongside people seeking sanctuary in the way that I've mentioned. So you can volunteer. I would really recommend joining our community. So signing up to our newsletter will give you regular updates about what's going on and how to get involved. And then finally, if you go back to the volunteering page and down here, you can see there are a huge number of other organisations in Sheffield to get involved. And now this is something we put together to support people if it doesn't work volunteering with us or donating to us. There's loads of other things you can do. So I encourage you to have a look at that, explore these organisations and think about what you can do to support them either individually or collectively. I will stop there and open it up for questions. I can stay for probably another 5 to 10 minutes. If anyone.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I greet you all in the name of Christ and wish upon you the peace and blessings of God. It's a real privilege to share with you, and thank you, all of you, for the care and concern and the passion which you represent for in the interest of seeking justice. And tonight, especially as we think of asylum seekers and and refugees. That was lovely to hear, Tom. Obviously, I'm familiar with the work, but that's the first time I've actually heard him speaking in a meeting, and it was good, well said, and well done. And yeah, in addition to what he was saying, I think one good question was, what would new legislation look like? I think the only thing I would add really is that I would like to see safe routes being made available for people who want to come here, because at the moment the only route is the unsafe and the illegal route, and then they run into the kind of cul-de-sac that if you come here by illegal means, you can't claim asylum here. There's no right to do that. That's the current bill, the unworkable bill, illegal migration bill, as Tom said. But the way around that, if people from Ukraine and Hong Kong can come here safely without using those useless sea vessels, come here by plane and through safe routes, then we should make the same routes available for all refugees, whatever their country of origin. That would be at the top of my requirement for legislation from a new government. Anyway, what can I say to you? I mean, Tom has done so well. I think I want to say a little bit of what churches can do. Since we're all church-based people, I'll focus on the task that faces us. And I want to use a sentence from the Bible. And the sentence for me tonight is a more excellent way. 1 Corinthians 12, that's the last verse in 1 Corinthians 12. So I want to direct you to a more excellent way, says the writer, and then writes about love. And then right at the beginning of chapter 14, it says, so pursue love, so seek love. So what is it? What's a more excellent way? How can we do things better? All right, there's lots of strategies on offer, lots of ways being proposed. But what's a a more excellent way. I'd like us to just think about that. And I think that's a contribution we can make to reflect on that. Compassionate and welcoming responses to refugees arriving in the UK across the English Channel are, for me, lighting up ways to challenge hostility with protective hospitality. These responses include a number of Methodist churches that have become churches of sanctuary, a whole circuit, Brighton and Hove circuit, were declared a circuit of sanctuary. That's because every church in the circuit became a church of sanctuary. That's a first. And I'd like to think our circuit might become a circuit of sanctuary. That's my challenge to our Sheffield circuit, but also the other circuits represented here. So there are small and large churches and congregations that are taking up the route of church of sanctuary. Nailsea Methodist Church. Nailsea, forgive me for saying this, is to Bristol what Chesterfield might be to Sheffield. It's just, just a little bit further south of Bristol, like Chesterfield is just a little bit further south to Sheffield, and smaller town. And Nailsea Methodist Church has become a church of sanctuary. And on Sunday evening, just gone, I was in Chester at the Chester Cathedral, giving them the certificate of becoming a cathedral of sanctuary. So there's 12 churches, large and small, this year already up to date, that have become churches or cathedrals of sanctuary. And their prophetic responses help to unpack a little bit of what may be defined as a more excellent way, challenging hostility with hospitality. To go back to Nailsea, according to the North Somerset Council webpage, which I've looked at, some hotels in the area have been used to provide accommodation for asylum seekers. I always put asylum seekers in quotation marks because it's a meaningless term for me. I prefer to talk about people seeking sanctuary, but that's the legal term, asylum seekers. There are no asylums in this country anymore. The last asylums were closed in the 60s. So why we have asylum seekers, I don't know. Anyway, the webpage gives helpful information for the local community. And the small Nailsea Methodist congregation reached out to asylum seekers who are housed in a nearby hotel with expressions of welcome and friendship and community, a bit like what you're doing in Chesterfield. And the congregation works with other local churches to provide a conversation cafe for refugees. And Reverend Deborah Mallet, who is the local Methodist minister there, says that welcoming the stranger as a central place in the life of the congregation. The call to love our neighbors, she says, whoever they are and wherever they come from, lie at the heart of the Christian faith. We aspire to be a community of welcome and a safe place for all. So the Church of Sanctuary Award recognizes proven commitments to learning about the issues so that we live by fact and not fiction, embedding practices of hospitality and inclusion, and making sure we celebrate the contributions of people who live amongst us as refugees, and then we encourage others to do the same. And to become a church of sanctuary is a marker along an ongoing journey to express deeper solidarity with isolated, marginalized, and much maligned communities. And cathedrals of sanctuary, well, there's a 1,000-year history of cathedrals of sanctuary. Is nothing new. We're not talking about some new initiative. It's an ancient principle that I'd just like to see being lived again. And the practice of sanctuary began to re-emerge in the UK in the 80s and the 90s. when a number of people took sanctuary in church buildings. And in contemporary practice, sanctuary is providing in communities, is provided in communities of welcome and hospitality. This is what a cathedral or church of sanctuary is, with the focus on the congregation working together to build cultures of welcome and hospitality in solidarity with refugees and people seeking sanctuary. And the ecumenical instrument, Churches Together in Britain and Ireland, is working with the national charity City of Sanctuary, whose home is here in Sheffield, to develop and promote the Church of Sanctuary movement. And alongside people of different faiths and beliefs involved in the work of hospitality and sanctuary, this continues to be an important and urgent work for churches. The purpose is to do all we can to ensure that people seeking sanctuary among us have the protective hospitality in communities and cultures of welcome and hospitality. So, a bit about the context then. Tom laid that out very well, but we've got this idea of the more excellent way, but I think what's being promoted politically is the environment hostility, summed up in the phrase "stop the boats." The environment, the hostile environment includes the vilification of refugees crossing the English Channel in small boats, and the threat to send illegal immigrants to Rwanda. That most asylum seekers come into UK in unseaworthy vessels across the terrifying waters of the busy English Channel route are illegal immigrants or economic migrants and unworthy of sanctuary here is a fallacy. Just 2 days ago, the Refugee Council published a report. It's called The Truth About Channel Crossing and the Impact of the Illegal Migration Act. The report analyzes the Home Office statistics on channel crossings, and according to the Home Office's own figures, 74% of all the arrivals on those boats are recognized as genuine asylum seekers. When their case is processed, 74% are deemed to be genuine asylum seekers, people who have seen to have fled persecution, terror, and oppression. So most of the people crossing the English Channel are genuine refugees. That's the fact, according to the Home Office. According to the report from the Refugee Council, more than half of the people who arrive across the English Channel are from just 5 countries: Afghanistan, Iran, Eritrea, Syria, and Sudan. If you just think about that, that tells you that most of the people who leave their home to come over here are from countries in or close to conflict. So Britain is home to only 1% of the world's refugees. So the Home Secretary's language of crisis and invasion and hurricane misrepresents the reality and is unhelpful in the context, and only helps to ramp up and legitimize hatred and hate speech. I would say deliberate dehumanizing and demonizing of refugees in the interest of political purposes, short-term publicity, and point scoring may be hollow rhetoric, but it deepens hatred and is extremely dangerous and has to be challenged. So stop the boats is the political mantra now, designed to further the hostile environment as a deterrence to refugees coming to the UK. So boats are an interesting metaphor, aren't they? I could say a lot about that, looking at the history of boats, transatlantic slave trade, 100,000 people each year during those years, transported in British boats from Africa to the Americas for enslaved labor. And the Titanic, why was that so big? It was because so many people wanted to leave Britain and Ireland to go and find a better life in the USA. Empire Windrush, um, which brought people here from the Caribbean to help build the motherland at the invitation of Enoch Powell, a boat that has come to symbolize migration and racism and the Windrush scandal. My own family traveled from India to Africa on a boat called Karanja, and I went on it when I was 10 a couple of times. Awful boat, but you know, boats, we could talk about them a lot and how they've been used. And we often talk about being in the same boat. You remember COVID-19? We were all in the same boat, although we weren't. And we are all in the same boat often represents conversations around Mother Earth and climate change. And boats feature prominently in Jesus's ministry. There are strong images of Jesus on small boats in choppy waters, sometimes for the purposes of safety, sometimes using a boat as a pulpit. And it was noted on an occasion that when he set off on a boat, alongside his vessel, there were other small boats. Mark 4, verse 36. So, and a boat symbolizes the ecumenical movement, perhaps based on the idea of an ark, like Noah's Ark, maybe mindful of the boat Jonah sailed in and from which he was ejected, only to be swallowed by a whale. The logo of the World Council of Churches and Churches Together in England portrays the church as a boat afloat on the ocean of the world with a mast in the form of a cross, symbolizing faith and unity and the message of the ecumenical movement. So boats we could talk about a bit. Sadly, many of the boats in the news and media currently are unseaworthy or capsized, broken or overturned. Thousands of people seeking sanctuary and crossing dangerous seas have drowned and died. You gave us some figures, and remembering that important anniversary yesterday, in the year 2022 alone, it is estimated that 2,062 people died while crossing the Mediterranean. The true numbers are unknown. Between 2014 and 2018, for instance, about 12,000 people who drowned were never found again. Do you remember that boat recently that capsized and 500 people were lost in the sea, and hardly 100 of them were brought to land? So overturned boats are far too common a sight today, symbols of broken institutions perhaps that fail to protect people, lifesavers they claim to be, but moral wrecks they are. On Lampedusa Island, there is in the harbour area what is termed the boat cemetery, where dozens of capsized refugee boats are laid out and abandoned. The rope I'm wearing, I picked up on one of those boats when I visited the island. It's now my stole, and I wonder what stories this boat would tell if it could speak. Those boats, like this rope, hold memories and stories of struggle, loneliness, fear, fragility, and also hope for life. And shipwrecks, you know, they're a familiar image in the Bible as well, aren't they? Paul talked about 3 times being shipwrecked and being adrift in the sea. An overturned boat, ironically, it is a tragic image and represents harm and danger, but it also is the shape of a dome or a roof or a shelter. So how can people have safe routes to travel? And how can a boat become a symbol of safety again, of rescue and being saved? And what part can churches play? Churches have not always been the sanctuary they enshrine. We all know about harm in churches, but how can churches pay more attention to their motif? and uphold the sacredness of movement and craving safety and building sanctuary. After all, the word ecumenical itself has its roots in the Greek word oikumene, meaning the whole inhabited earth, and embraces all people. It is about reaching out to and including and being a safe home for everyone. So how can we bring safety into situations of harm and danger? And what role can we play in building communities and cultures of sanctuary, protective hospitality, welcome, and safety? So there are different strategies, as we've heard, being held up before us in relation to boats and carrying refugees seeking sanctuary across turbulent waters. But for our purposes, I want to go back to that phrase, a more excellent way, the scriptural call to a more excellent way. What does a more excellent way mean? What might it represent? What might it look like? These words introduce 1 Corinthians 13, which is a beautiful poem, and its wisdom should not be confined to wedding ceremonies. Its original intention was to give direction to small congregations struggling to discern their best gifts and their best calling, and how to use their best gifts in situations of deep conflict and opposing views. And 1 Corinthians 13 prioritizes love. It asserts that without love, all gifts and actions are a sham and a show. Words without love, however angelic and well-meaning they might be, are hollow rhetoric like noisy gongs or clanging cymbals. It insists that love has to be incarnated, made real and visible. We have to express love, and love is revealed and recognized in kindness, patience, humility, self-giving, truthfulness, bearing with one another, keeping hope alive, and being able to face up to all the things that life might bring you. And it affirms that love is eternal, not a short-term expression. It endures, never ends. Love outlasts. The Greek word translated outlasts is pipto, which literally means never stumbles, never trips up. Love never stumbles, never trips up. No other gift is complete, says 1 Corinthians 13. No other gift lasts, and no other gift compares to love. Love is the more excellent way. So, 1 Corinthians 14, verse 1. So, pursue love. We aim at love, grow towards it. However imperfect our efforts, it is an ongoing, never-ending pathway. We aim at perfection, as the Wesleys might say, but perfection is only completed in eternal life. So how can we respond in love to people seeking sanctuary? That's my question. That's what I wrestle with. And how can we respond in love to people seeking sanctuary? And what would be strategies which are enshrined in love? That's my question. Is it not our calling to call out for a politics of love? Wouldn't it be great if political strategy was to be rooted in love? Everything that the Prime Minister said today, I did listen to him, and I thought, what's the substance to this? He talked about love cascading through families, but what about love cascading through political strategy? So I want to leave you with just one symbol of love, and that is strategy, protective, and that is sanctuary, protective hospitality. The way ahead I offer to you and for us to look at and consider this evening as an expression of love is Church of Sanctuary. Church of Sanctuary is a faith-based initiative a call to prophetic Christian witness, an expression of hospitality as a clear challenge to hostility. It's about the inclusion of all, valuing everyone's gift and everyone's contribution. The aim is to build protective hospitality. Hospitality can be patronizing, but I'm talking about protective hospitality, a two-way solidarity, which are mutually enriching. The hope is that churches will become places for all, proud to foster welcome, hospitality, and safety for people fleeing violence and persecution. That would be a clear demonstration of Christian discipleship as a holy act of solidarity and an expression of love. Sanctuary or hospitality with safety is a long-standing prophetic theme in scripture. The foundation is in the words, love your neighbor as yourself, love the stranger as yourself. It's the most repeated ethical, biblical requirement in Hebrew scriptures and is echoed in Jesus's teachings about how we treat the neighbor and those who are the little ones. In as much as you did it to them, you did it to me. So, my friends, churches take pride in being welcoming to all. It's a contradiction almost, and a tautology, in fact, to say churches should be welcoming. Of course, churches are welcoming, but many churches go beyond welcome and are thoroughly engaged with supporting refugees and people seeking sanctuary. So, what value is added by becoming a recognized church of sanctuary? Well, you become part of a movement to build cultures of welcome and hospitality, as Tom was outlining. You link up with other organizations. You are enabled to engage in more informed ways with serious issues that matter to you, and you become connected with refugees and people seeking sanctuary, and you help them to connect with support networks and agencies. In a church of sanctuary, all members of the congregation intentionally work together to learn more about the real stories of refugees and people seeking sanctuary, embed the values and cultures of welcome, hospitality, and safety as part of the values of your congregation and community, using these to support refugees and people seeking sanctuary, including them in your activities. And of course, then to share with pride your vision, commitment, and achievements, and let others know what you're doing and about the positive contributions of refugees to society and the benefits of welcoming others. So, buildings can provide shelter indeed, but sanctuary is best provided in human warmth, human community, and human relationships. Individuals and single congregations, of course, can provide hospitality, but it is stronger when it is in collaboration with others and the two-way process of mutuality and solidarity. Church of Sanctuary is not a political movement. It's not a campaigning political movement. It's a biblically inspired initiative, but it is about being prophetic, challenging hostility with hospitality. It can mean becoming political, and that, of course, is in keeping with the style of biblical prophets like Elijah, who was called the troubler of Israel, speaking truth to power with passion and compassion, seeking justice. Human warmth and welcome are the sanctuary we all hold and bring into relationships. Learning and working together to grow cultures of welcome and hospitality is rewarding. So your church might decide to apply for the Church of Sanctuary recognition. The application form for this is not a tick box exercise. It continues to be a learning exercise. Indeed, the whole process is about learning together, and there are suggestions if you want to really look at that in the book Hospitality and Sanctuary for All, which are prepared and which you can get from churches together in Britain and Ireland. The award has value as a statement by your congregation. It's about your inclusive values of welcome, hospitality, and safety for all. It's something to celebrate and to share, and your award will be an inspiration and encouragement to others. And in the process, you will help to build and strengthen refugee voices and leadership. And it's not the end of the process, that award. It's only part of a journey, which is an ongoing pilgrimage. In the end, it's not about getting a certificate to display as an example, for example, as an eco church initiative. It's more about learning together. It's more about building community together. So that's what I want to leave you. And to say, acts of love are not erased, they remain. They strengthen the foundations and the pathways of love for us and for others. And they are a lasting legacy. And it's a contribution that we can make with other agencies and with people of other faiths. I'll stop there, which is said quite a lot.